Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Washington County Board of Education. It's overwhelming to look out there and see just about every chair in this auditorium with a person in it, and I understand we have people in the overflow room as well. So thank you all for being here this evening with us, and welcome to all. I call this meeting to order, and we have all members present along with our student member, so I declare a quorum. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce a fifth grade student at Greenbrier Elementary School, Riley Myers. Riley is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Would you join us, please? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Hello, Riley.
Hello.
Do you have some folks here with you that you would like to introduce to us this evening?
Sitting right next to me over here is my mom, who is a lead teacher at Pleasant Valley Elementary School.
Okay. And who's this little guy beside your mom?
My brother,
And what's his name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And do you have someone from the school here with you?
My teacher, my principal, Dr. Bishop is my principal, and Miss Baker is my teacher.
All right. All right. Did we miss anyone? Did we get everyone?
My dad is sitting over there in the end.
Hi, Dad. Thank you all for being here in support of Riley. Riley, I understand that you love to dance. What kind of dancing do you like to do?
Hip hop and jazz.
Oh. And do you take lessons?
Yes.
You do. Awesome. And do you compete?
I am on a competition team for both.
I'm sorry. Again, please.
I am on a competition team for both.
You're on a competition team for both. And do you get to travel places to be able to compete?
Yes.
Where are some places that you've been?
I'm going to Nashville in February.
Wow. Nice. That sounds awesome. Awesome. So when you're not dancing, my notes tell me that you like to read, which I think is wonderful because I'm a big reader and I love to read. But it says that math is your favorite subject. How can that be? Mr. Prue's thrilled about that. So you love to read and math is your favorite subject.
Yes.
Wow.
She likes those word problems.
Problems. There you go. There you go. Do you have a favorite author?
Not exactly.
Not exactly. How about a favorite genre? Is there a particular book that you like to?
Comics.
Comics. All right. Okay. Now, I also know that you have a new puppy.
Yes.
Could you tell us what kind of puppy and what that puppy's name is?
A mini golden doodle.
Oh.
And his name is Barkley.
Barkley.
Well, we certainly have learned a lot about you through my interrogation, so thank you for withstanding that. Is there anything that you would like to ask us? No? Okay. Colleagues, do you have any questions for Riley?
Do you like social studies?
Not my favorite.
I'm sad to hear that.
Well, Riley, before we thank you again and let you go, I'd like to acknowledge that your mom is a lead teacher at Pleasant Valley Elementary School, and we certainly appreciate all the good work that you do, Pleasant Valley, so thank you. Riley, thank you again. It was a pleasure to have you with us. Good luck to you there at Greenbrier. Keep reading and keep doing math, okay? Thanks so much.
Thank
Okay, at this time, we'll have approval of this evening's agenda. Is there a motion?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of approval of the agenda? All right, we have 7 affirmative. Student member concurs, so we have an approved agenda. We'll move to the approval of the minutes.
President Williams, I move for the approval of work session minutes dated Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the work session dated January 3rd? No? Then we'll move to the vote. All those in favor? Okay. Get those hands up, because somebody had a hand up and put it back down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we have 5 affirmative. Do we have any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay, so that set of minutes is approved.
President Williams, I move for the approval of closed session minutes dated Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. We'll move to the vote on the closed session minutes. All those in favor of approval? Okay, have, were you for that? Did you have your hand up? So, we had 3.
No.
Oh, I was going
It
to
was
say,
4.
did you have your hand
I
up?
had my hand up.
Okay, well, that's what I was saying. He thought I was talking to him. All right, so we had 4 affirmative, abstentions. You should have 3. All right, thank you. That set of minutes has been approved. We did have 4 votes.
President Williams, I move for the approval of the business minutes dated Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zedmeyer. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the business meeting? We'll move to the vote. All those in favor? Okay, we have 1, 2, 3. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
1,
I
2,
thought you saw it.
4, 5. Student member concurs with the affirmative. Abstentions? 1, 2. Okay. My head needs to be on a swivel. And you all are quick to put them up and quick to take them down, so. All right, so we have 3 approved set of minutes. Thank you all. At this time, we'll move to the superintendent's report. Dr. Sovine?
Yes, President Williams, members of the board, it's my pleasure to invite Micah Sox, the supervisor of visual and performing arts, forward as we will recognize student musicians and performers for achieving state champion awards in field band. I believe first we will recognize the Boonesboro High School Warrior Band and then the North Hagerstown High School Hub Band.
Well, good evening, President Williams, Dr. Savine, and members of the board. We're proud to honor 2 state champion marching bands this evening. We know that Washington County has a long, rich history of outstanding music programs, and these 2 programs certainly continue to honor that legacy. The bands compete in 2 different competitive circuits. First, we'd like to recognize the Boonesboro High School Warrior Band as the 2A state champions in the Maryland Marching Band Association circuit. The MMBA circuit is a Maryland-only marching band circuit. They held their championships on November 6th, 2022 at Towson University. In addition to being state champions, the band won special captions for Best Percussion, Best Music, and Best Overall Effect. So at this time, we'd like to honor those members. David Belasco, Anthony Byerlin, Jackson Berker, Kira Burnett, Trenton Campbell, Eileen Collins, Sarah Cook, Madeline Crocker, Caitlin Discavige, Braden Foster, Valerie Hayden, Morgan Holtzman, Mia Horton, Nate Ingram, Benjamin Little, Ryan Lord, Esther Lowe, Amber Maynard, Lauren Meyer, Corey Mills, Lucas Orientis, Anna Owens, Aiden Posgay, Allison Reichard, Karis Reichard, Drake Rotmund, Tony Rudy, Caden Smith, Kylie Sparks, Zachary Stanfield, Haley Stern, Anaya Tay, Chloe Trumpauer, Nora Van Heining, Riley Vaughn, Haley Wachter, Ian Ward, Drew Warwick. And I want to take a moment and recognize Band Director Scott Engel, and I believe Mr. Morris, the percussion instructor, is here with him as well this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a big hand for the Boonesboro High School Warrior Band State Champions.
Okay. All right, good smiles here on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And again, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna do one more right here. And 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Congratulations.
Next, we would like to recognize the North Hagerstown High School Hub Band for their Maryland Championship in the U.S. Band Circuit. U.S. Bands is a national circuit that holds state, regional, and national championship shows. And the U.S. Bands Maryland State Championship show was held on Saturday, October 22nd at Towson University. North High also won caption awards for Best Color Guard, Best Percussion, and Best Visual Production. In addition, the band went on then to travel to Allentown, Pennsylvania on November 5th to compete in the U.S. Band's National Championship show, where they placed 5th. So at this time, we'd like to recognize those students. Elena Althouse, Reed Althouse, Kelmy Echeverro, Aubrey Betts, Jenna Betts, Sharada Bista, Liam Brooks, Andrew Brown, Ziva Buffington, Braden Caffarelli, Wyatt Kraus, Tana Marie Davis, Camden Diller, Rebecca Fate, Victor Galika, Brady Gettle, J.L. Hernandez, Nicholas Humphrey, Tennyson Hoon, Nora Lewis, Margaret McLean, Mackenzie Martin, Genesis Miguel, Madeline Mills, Vinel Moranta Mencia, Ella Murthy, Nora Murthy, Logan Nally, Andrew Neisser, Thomas Neisser, Zachary Nolan, Marcus Pascal, Jeffrey Paulus, Lindsay Paulus, Alexis Quiones Arizola, Jacob Rhodes, Litzy Rivas, Emma Robinson, Kira Robinson, Mason Robinson, Mia Robinson, Gabrielle Sanders, David Russell Spears Botlemy, Emma Swope, Mariah Turner, Marcus Wegman, and Brody Young. Let's also take a moment and recognize Band Director Jessica Maynor, as well as the staff with us tonight, Leanna Hollis, Christina Ronson, and Bradley O'Connor. Let's have a big round for the Pup Band, state champions, U.S. Band Circuit.
Bird.
I think they're getting ready. Yeah, they're getting ready.
Nice job, Aaron.
It's a good analogy.
Is it something you say?
Courtney loved it. You loved it.
Coming, there were people in the hallway waiting to come
I
in.
feel like there's
We've got
gonna
our
be more people
regulars out
coming
there
in
in the hall.
after, so.
Yeah, there's probably.
Didn't want to stay for the audit?
That was a lot of sweaty hands. April. You can put that around this.
So Dr. Savine will have more of your superintendent's report following new business. But at this time, we have a report to the board, which is the presentation of a single audit report. We have Mr. Sampson and Mr. David Brandenburg, our Executive Director of Finance. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, President Williams, and members of the board, and Dr. Sovine. In October, we brought you the audit results for the regular financial statement audit, and as part of their engagement, our independent auditors also review our federal programs and do what is referred to as a single audit, which is supposed to take place of different agencies doing their separate audits, but our federal programs are reviewed and so forth, and he can talk about his reports and everything. But our federal funding, our expenditures under federal awards last year were about 14% of our total spending, and that's about twice what it used to be pre-COVID, and then, it's so much higher because of the COVID grants that we've gotten in the last couple of years and that we'll be spending over the next couple of years as well. So without further ado, I'll let Mr. Sampson explain their reports and any other highlights of the report that he wants to go over.
Thank you, David. So as David mentioned, the purpose of the single audit report is to report the school system's, federal expenditures for the year ended June 30th, 2022, and also to report the results of our testing over the major programs for that year. So I'd like to thank David and his staff for providing us all the information. They provide the schedule of expenditure of federal awards to us, and we audit it. Some required communication is we had no significant difficulties in performing the single audit. We had no disagreements with management over the schedule of expenditure of federal awards, and we obtained the required representations from management prior to issuing the single audit. So the schedule of expenditure of federal awards, that's, as I said, lists all the federal expenditures. We express an opinion that the schedule is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the financial statements as a whole. The school did expend $54.2 million in federal expenditures during the year ended June 30th, 2022. $20.6 million of that was, of course, mostly related to the ESSER grants, which was the biggest program and one of our major programs. So as far as the results of our testing, there's two opinions we issue in accordance with government auditing standards. The Yellow Book opinion, as we call it, really relates to the internal control over financial reporting. There was no findings related to the internal control over financial reporting, and there was also no material non-compliance noted during the performance of our audit. So you had a clean Yellow Book opinion. The second opinion is basically related to our testing over the entity's major federal programs. Our major programs were Title I, the COVID-19 Education Stabilization Fund, and also the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. So we had three major programs. For each major program, we test the internal control over the program and also compliance. We had no findings over the internal control over compliance for those major programs. So you had a clean opinion on that for the year ended June 30th, 2022. That's all I really had to present to the board, unless there's any questions related to the single audit.
Congratulations once again on having a clean audit.
That's our goal.
That's your goal, and you achieve it, and we appreciate the fine work that you do, David, and that of your staff.
Thank you. I
those
have
that
an
work
excellent
for you.
staff. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Time in our meeting for public comment. Before we begin, I'll read from policy KD. This is our policy regarding public comment, procedures during business meetings. Each person wishing to address the Board of Education is encouraged but not required to sign up prior to the meeting and may address any topic concerning Washington County Public Schools except personnel or student matters which clearly identify an individual or individuals. Each speaker may speak for up to 5 minutes. And we have a new timer this evening. Mrs. Murray is going to be our timer. Mrs. Murray, would you like to explain the timing process?
When you have 30 seconds left, I will hold this up, and that means wrap it up, and then this means your time is up.
Okay, so we have no one who has signed up in advance. So if there's anyone who would like to come forward at this time to speak during public comment, this is your opportunity. Yes, sir. If you'd please tell us your name.
All right. So good morning, everyone. My name's Ifan, and I am a senior at North High. I am also the president of the Washington County Association of Student Councils. So as a high school senior, I'm part of the demographic that's going to be most directly impacted by the new class rank policies. And so I'm hoping that I can provide some unique perspective on that issue. So the first thing that I kind of want to establish here is that class rank is an issue that only, when I say only, I mean only affects a very limited batch of top students. So in some classes, in some cases, not even the top students think that it's too much of a relevant issue. I have a friend who is admitted to like an Ivy League university who didn't know his class rank. And outside of that really small elite group, I believe that the general student body isn't particularly invested in knowing their class rank or finding out. So when large portions of the student population are, for example, struggling to turn in assignments as is, or sometimes not even showing up for school, class rank is one of the things that's probably near the bottom of their list of priorities. So from this point forward, I'm really going to be examining how fair class rank as it is now is for those top students. So as of now, class rank is based on GPA, but a student's GPA has never and will never reflect a student's actual academic performance. So in some of my classes, grades are so drastically curved that a student who answers every single question correctly on a test will score the same as a student who only gets 70% of the questions right. I know people who score perfect 5s on the AP exams that have the same in-class grades as people who failed their AP exams. Our academic standards at this point for GPA are so diluted that GPA has long since ceased to be a reliable metric for academic performance. So whether or not a student is really proficient in the topic that they're studying isn't reflected in our GPA whatsoever anymore. It's because of that I believe that ranking students by GPA isn't an accurate or a fair way of recognizing achievements for these top students. I'm not against having a recognition for these top students, and I'm not against having a valedictorian or ranking students based on academics. What I'm against is using GPA, which I believe is a flawed metric, to measure it. If, say, we were to prohibit grade curving or test scores were factored into our GPA, then I would be fully in favor of class rank. But as it stands right now, because we're using GPA to measure it, it's a flawed metric. So I'm fully in favor of removing class rank, but I also think that there's a necessary step that we have to take once we remove class rank. There needs to be a replacement of some sort so that we can continue to recognize students who are academic top performers and who take that initiative in their classes by, for example, factoring in things like test scores or non-curved, like your non-curved results. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, President Williams, Dr. Sovine, and other members of the board. I'm Dominic Ronfola, a junior at South Hagerstown High School, a high school at-large member of the Washington County Association of Student Councils' Board of Student Leaders, and the president of the South Hagerstown High School SGA. I believe that the proposed revisions to policies IKD and IKA are drastically misguided. The most common argument for removing titles such as valedictorian and salutatorian is their inaccurate measures of those who put in the most work. This is largely based on middle school opportunities to take certain courses such as FOT, Spanish 1, algebra, and geometry. Now, most people are willing to admit that those who choose to, or who are put into those courses and put forth the high school level effort at the middle school level, deserve to receive the fruits of their labor later on in high school by not having to retake those courses, not having them factored into their GPA. However, by setting a standard, by equalizing the high school courses available to middle schoolers across the county, we can more fairly reflect the GPA and the amount of effort put forth by these students once they get into high school. Another common point used to argue the unusability of class rank as an accurate indicator of who put in the most work is that students transferring to other programs within the county create an opportunity for someone to come to a high school and essentially steal the title of valedictorian out from under the student who formerly possessed it or would have possessed it. Within the county, the main reason for this to happen is programs like Barbara Ingram School for the Arts and the Technical High School, which already have provisions written into policy IKD, which enables them to use different designations for highest honors. However, class rank still is in effect at these schools, and as they go to college and as they apply to college, transferring to one of these programs may still be beneficial and may still have a negative effect on other members of these schools. And further, any recalculation for a transfer student into one of these programs only serves to punish those who may be transferring to follow new ambitions. This issue is also one that needs to be discussed, but one that is not solved by getting rid of class rank system as it stands. This is all to say that the current policy is meant to address a real problem with how we calculate class rank and how we calculate GPA. The revisions are not a solution, but rather a cover. Class rank will still be calculated and sent to colleges. The answer is not to eliminate the system, but to amend it and its components to make it a more accurate indicator. Thank you all for your consideration of my comments here today, and have a nice evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Nora Murthy, and I am a freshman at North High. I also serve on the Board of Student Leaders of WCAC as a high school member at large. I'm coming from a more personal perspective. I love music. It is something that I'm truly passionate about, as you saw earlier. I have been in music programs my entire life, from school musicals to singing and now percussion. It's something that I'm looking to continue pursuing throughout high school. With the system in place, my choice to take music classes could make or break my chance of becoming valedictorian. I've witnessed many people sacrificing their love of music and for the arts just to get one more 5.0 credit and climb higher in the class rank, even as an underclassman. Having to give up your passion just to be able to make it higher is a cruel side effect of the current class rank system, as it discourages many students from taking advantage of all the elective classes that offer just to put that title on the resume. Another major flaw in this system is which middle school that you attend impacting your class rank, as Dominic mentioned. Even if you are in the magnet program in middle school, it doesn't mean that you have a fair chance as everyone else, because you get all those advantages that come with getting upper classes. I had the privilege of attending a school that gave me a geometry credit in 8th grade, but I know many people that did not have that privilege and feel pessimistic that did not have that opportunity. I personally didn't realize that factor in choosing my middle school program, and I'm sure that many other families did not as well. Because the system forces you to determine your life path so early to be deemed successful, it's clear that there are many flaws. No matter how much I may see the consequences of the policy in my daily life, I do also have to acknowledge the benefits of the class rank system. I believe it encourages students to succeed and recognizes those who strive toward success. I know many people who use it as a motivation to take that harder class or to study more, which is something that I believe students should always work towards. I just cannot fully support a system that only values a certain pathway of education. As this reality has become more apparent to me, even as an underclassman, I have chosen to pursue my passions and take the classes that I truly enjoy. I have to accept the fact that class rank is simply a number and doesn't define my worth. Therefore, I am neutral to the change in policy. Because while I believe the current system is very flawed, I don't believe that it should get fully changed without an agreed-upon system being put in its place. I believe that neither option is necessarily perfect, and there are too many issues on either side to justify action either way currently. In my opinion, I believe that we should ask more students what they would prefer and work towards finding a balance between keeping or completely scrapping the system. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other individuals who'd like to come forward this time? No? Okay. Oh, we have one person? Okay. Good evening.
My name is Leanne, and I'm a parent of a child at elementary school and a high school. And I want to talk about what is not being done for students being bullied. I've watched several of these meetings online and asked questions. I feel I'll only get answers by coming here, when most of the time I've reported incidents of both my students getting bullied or their friends. I'm usually given the answer of, well, what has your student done to prevent this? Has your student walked away? We can't get involved, we didn't see it. And unfortunately, when some of these students who are getting bullied finally fight back, that's when the teachers finally pay attention and they get in trouble. I've volunteered many times at Eastern Elementary, and when they were doing their cross-country run, in the very small course, I saw 5 fights break out. Physical fights of a girl putting a boy in a headlock and punching him, boys antagonizing the girls, not just normal teasing, just it's going to the extreme. And basically, all I'm being told is fill out this form and we'll deal with it. So, I don't know, I'm just really I'm tired of the excessive bullying. I'm tired of kids coming home and saying so-and-so told me to kill myself, with how just everything is right now. And I really don't know what else to say, so.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming and speaking to us. We don't dialogue at this time. Dr. Savine, is there a staff member that could perhaps provide some help to this lady? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Students, thank you again. No one else for public comment? At this time, we'll have board member response to public comment.
I'm sorry they left. I'd like to say how articulate they are and how wonderful it is to see someone delve into policy and come up with such cogent comments.
Well said. Well said. I appreciated their comments as well. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move to old business. Our first item of old business is the second reading of proposed changes to Exhibit BDF-9, Washington County Board of Education Safe School Advisory Committee. We have Mrs. Ram, our Chief Legal Counsel, and Policy Committee Liaison.
Good evening, President Williams, Dr. Savine, members of the board. The Board of Education approved the first reading of proposed changes to Exhibit BDF-E9 at its public business meeting on December 13th, 2022. Following the approval, a notice is placed on board docs and the school system's website seeking public comment on the proposed changes. No comments were received. The Policy Committee is now recommending the Board of Education approve the second reading of proposed changes to Exhibit BDF-E9.
Thank you, Mrs. Ram. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve the second reading of proposed changes to Exhibit BDFE9 entitled Washington County Board of Education Safe Schools Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Do we have any questions, comments, any discussion? Okay, then we move to the vote. We're voting to approve the second reading of proposed changes to Exhibit BDF-E9 entitled Washington County Board of Education Safe Schools Advisory Committee. All those in favor? We have 7 affirmative and the student member concurs, so the motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to new business. Our first item of new business is proposed, it's the first reading of proposed changes to policy BCA, board reorganizational meeting. And again, we have Mrs. Ram with us.
The Policy Committee reviewed policy BCA at its public work sessions on November 10th and December 6, 2022. The committee recommended several changes to the policy in order to correctly format the policy and to comply with state law. Changes to the policy include codifying that the Board of Education's organization meeting must occur on or before December 16th each year, and stating that all board members, with the exception of the student member, may make nominations for president and vice president. Language was added to the policy to set forth a process should the vice president be unable to serve as president, and should the offices of both president and vice president become vacant at the same time. The Policy Committee is recommending the Board of Education approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy BCA.
Thank you, Mrs. Ram. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy BCA entitled Board Organizational Meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Do we have any questions, any discussion? No? You ready to vote then? Okay. We're voting on the first reading of proposed changes to policy BCA entitled Board Organizational Meeting, approving the first reading. All those in favor? All right, we have 7 affirmative. Student member concurs. We have an approved first reading. All right, our next action item is the first reading of proposed changes to policy IKD, honor rolls and graduation honors.
Staff requested the Policy Committee to review changes it was proposing due in part to recent changes made to policy IKD. The committee reviewed the proposed changes at its public work session on December 6, 2022, and offered additional changes to the policy at that time. Changes to policy IKD include changing the percentage grades identified to be on the honor roll or distinguished honor roll to letter grades in accordance with policy IKA, identifying academic honors by their Latin terms, and adding college-level classes such as AP, IB, or dual credit to the requirements to receive summa cum laude and magna cum laude academic honors. In addition, the changes eliminate the designation of valedictorian and salutatorian and instead allow for student graduation speakers as designated by the school principal or their designee. Language has been added to the policy stating that the superintendent is to promulgate an administrative regulation that will provide guidance to high schools on selecting student graduation speakers. It is important to note that secondary principals are in agreement with the proposed changes to this policy. The Policy Committee is recommending the Board of Education approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy IKD.
Thank you, Mrs. Ram. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy IKD entitled Honor Rolls and Graduation Honors.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any questions, any discussion?
I have a question. Was it a unanimous decision by the secondary principals to change the policy?
Yes.
So I see here it says staff requested the policy committee to review changes what and who prompted that request?
If I may call up Dr. Willow.
So it's really started in one of our blueprint committees. This conversation came up with the policy that you approved at our last board meeting, IKA, which gets into class rank. Just to clear up some comments that we heard earlier, class rank is still part of IKA, which we passed last week. So class rank at this point in time does not go away. What you got into with IKA was how we weigh courses, and really what has forced us to look at both of these policies, or what we talked about earlier today in our work session, the blueprint plan. With many more options now available to students, it becomes much more challenging. With all of the AA pathways, the apprenticeship pathways, the AP pathways, the CTE pathways, the IB pathways, it's just different than what we traditionally have done when we were in school.
So, I mean, my problem is then if we still have the class rankings, okay, so we remove the title, but we don't change the fact that there still is a first and second, so we just get rid of the Latin term. You know, it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me like the biggest concern everyone has is that due to the grading policy and the weighting and all that, that is what the concern is, and that's why people want to do it. But if that's the case and we're still keeping the class rank system, we don't fix the problem. We just mask it by removing the title. And now we go and take away a kid who, let's just say Ms. Cruz over here is number one in her class. Now let's just go and say she's number one, and well, the principal, I don't know, something happened, and now all of a sudden it's subjective and she's not able to go and be the speaker in the graduation. I don't understand why we're taking that away from the kid who did the hard work. It's almost like we're moving away from a merit-based program. And if these young men are right about it only affecting a small amount of the kids, then the ones who are working toward it should be rewarded for that as well. So why are we removing it? What exactly are we accomplishing?
Well, and here's the challenge. And so we had really good conversations with not just principals, but with committee members. And the challenge is this. When we had class rank before, and you were in a building, typically Val and Sal, you took AP classes or IB classes, and the number of A's that you earned, the more AP, IB classes you took, and with the more A's, the weighted courses, that's how you became Val or Sal respectively, right? Now, there are all types of dual credit classes that have been added. And so we already are getting emails, Mr. Evans, can I take IB, AP during the day and go and take full schedules at HCC in the evening? Can I take online classes? What it's become is a race to not only do what you can do during the school day, but also in the evening. The other struggle that we had as a committee, today we talked about wonderful apprenticeship opportunities. You earn your CNA your junior year and you're out working for Meritus as a nurse, starting to work towards your 4-year degree. How do we weigh that? How do we take that and make meaning out of that and put it into a current system? And that's where the committee that looked at this had a real struggle. It's when you start to expand summer, when you start to expand evening classes, when you start to race to how many HCC classes you can take in the evening or after school while taking IB and AP during the day, there's just different rules to that. We did talk about removing class rank in its entirety. There's not many colleges, but some colleges still ask for that. So we didn't want to eliminate that full system because if a student was asked that, we wanted to be able to provide that. There were some recommendations to remove it. This is challenging in the sense, we kept in all of the academic awards around GPA. We didn't remove any of those except for the exception with the Val and Sal, just because, to be quite honest, it makes it very difficult to create rules that are consistent here. Now, if I can get out to HCC in the evening, I have a chance to be Val. Whereas if you don't have a chance to get out there in the evening, Mr. Evans, you don't have that chance. And that's sort of the struggle. We're certainly tonight presenting this as a first read. We want to hear more comment. It was very good to hear from students. But I hope I articulated some of the rationale and what we're trying to do with this.
You absolutely did, and I don't disagree. I agree that there is a problem with the weighted grading system, but we're not changing the right thing at that point. This just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why we think that by taking away the hard work that the kid has done to become number one in the class goes and fixes the problem. If I understand exactly what you're saying, if a kid wants to go and get their AA degree and, you know, all of a sudden, or we have the apprentice, I get what you're saying 100%, and I know it's not easy. Quite frankly, I have no clue what the answer is. But by taking this away does not fix the problem that we're discussing. All we're doing is just masking it. And this just doesn't make sense. I don't understand why removing this fixes the ranking system.
Well, I think the hope was that with the academic awards still in place, you were no longer, with the designations on the first part of the policy, that students were still getting recognized for all of their academic achievements. But I understand what you're saying, and it's a point well taken.
The kid that did work to get that number one, we're still taking away 1 and 2. We're still taking away their right to speak and putting that right on someone else. I mean, again, we're changing the wrong thing here.
Appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, I was going to ask Dr. Willow, can you talk about what your thoughts were on, that you brought up to the committee about implementation, that it would take a while, you would delay this?
So I believe the regulation starts with the incoming ninth grade class or the policy, starts with the incoming class for next year. So this would not impact any of our current 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th graders. We did not think it would be fair to make changes based mid-year, or I should say midway through their high school career. So this would start with incoming freshmen next year.
Another thing that Mr. Evans brought up to me was, right now in the policy, we have the school principal or their designee designating the graduation speakers. If this were to pass, is there a way to encourage it where there may be a committee, or I think the ultimate authority is the principal usually, but.
Correct, and I think there was a good discussion within policy committee on that, is why we put in the need for regulations around this.
Got it.
To make sure that, this was something that was being looked at. How do we select our speakers for graduation? I think it's a little different at each of our schools. While we've tried to standardize the process, each school's a little different on who's selected to speak. Yes, you normally have the Val and Sal, but sometimes the class president, sometimes the SGA president. There are some differences that are unique to the school, and I don't want to speak for the policy committee, but I think we also wanted to make sure that we respected that, and we didn't make changes to that.
And consistent with how we've handled other policies, execution of how you carry out the policy is contained within regulation. So that regulation would provide clarification on anything that's broad in the policy.
Great, thank you.
I think to address some of what we're saying, having worked with this intimately at North High, the difference between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is so infinitely small that you might honor 1 and 2, but 4, 5, 6, and 7 are not rewarded. And it's, in the end, the decision of maybe one teacher in their entire career has changed the whole course of what has happened. So when you're talking equity and fairness, you're right. It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
I just feel like we're taking away the equity and fairness at this point by the kids who put in that work. And again, what I'm hearing is that it's not that there is a grading or a ranking system, but that it's the way we rank them. So just change the way we rank them, and then, make that be more fair. Because I agree with everything that those students were saying. They were spot on, but they're not. What we're proposing here does not fix the problem.
Well, I know a few years ago, West Point High School, the difference between valedictorian and salutatorian was something like 4 1/1000ths of a point separating the two students. But there were other students very close to what Dr. Zentmeyer just said. The valedictorian, salutatorian got rewarded, but those who were like right up there, they didn't get them. There could be more than one speaker.
Absolutely.
When I graduated from high school, we didn't have a valedictorian and salutatorian. We had top 3 speakers. I don't know how they were chosen, but that was long time ago, too.
Dr. Llewellyn, in policy committee, you were able to give us some anecdotal information about, I don't want to call it game playing, but the lengths to which some students go to be able to acquire the necessary GPA to be there. And you talked a little bit about, with the blueprint and the opportunities that are provided students with dual enrollment credits and all of that, how their pursuit of credits and courses may not be necessarily in the best interest of their overall well-being.
Yeah.
Am I putting that in a way that
I'll
makes
try
sense
to
you?
elaborate. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think the challenge is we want students to pick the programs that make the most sense for them and not to be in ones where I know I have to take this. If you want to go out and you want to be an apprentice and you want to work at the hospital because you see yourself going into a medical field, we want you to do that without feeling the need, well, now I've cost myself the opportunity to be Val. I need to go take this next IB course or this next AP course, or I have to now take a full 8-period day of AP, IB, and then go take 5 college classes in the evening, because that's how I'll become Val and Sal without this being in place. At some point, we want students to make decisions. I'm probably the last holdout on this policy. And from a competition standpoint, I value that, right? But at some point, when you and I and all of us were in school, the rules were just different. There weren't as many options and opportunities. And the fact that we have more options and opportunities are a good thing. Nobody here is to say that's a bad thing. It's a good thing. But you will have scenarios where if I know, and I might ask the student board member to elaborate because she did an excellent job in policy committee, but where if I know, Ms. Williams, you have 3 college courses and I want to beat you and I'm number 2, I've got to go and sign up for 4. Because it's not just about, at this point, where I used to be limited to a 6-period day or an 8-period day. There's nothing that stops me from registering for evening high, summer classes, online classes. I just don't know what the end of that is. We did update the weighting policy, and we had a lot of parent and feedback and student feedback and lead teacher, department leader, principal, assistant principal feedback on that. And we do think we have it to be more fair. I don't know if there will ever be a perfect system for assigning weights to grades because it's so challenging. We're not taking away awards here. Let me be clear. There's still a lot of awards in this policy. And we don't take away GPA, which across the state is different. Every county establishes their own GPA, so colleges recalculate it when you apply. And so it is, what the students said earlier is true. GPA is by no means a perfect indicator, but it is the indicator that is used consistently, not just within the state of Maryland, but across the country, and even at the college level, as you all know. So again, I think the intent here from the principals, from our supervisors, from those that were involved in this discussion, is for students to make the best choice available for them as they see their future career pathways in front of them, and not to see how many more classes I can sign up. I can't imagine a schedule that has 8 college courses during the day, and then I'm going out and trying to take 4 or 5 or more in the evening. Again, I just don't know that makes sense. But I'm just one member of representing the principals, and certainly it's feedback like tonight that's helpful that we can go back to policy committee, and if we don't have it right, update it again.
Thank you, Dr. Weller.
And again, you could have the 5 speakers, introduce them in order of grade point average. This is the highest, this first speaker, second speaker, third speaker, fourth speaker, fifth speaker, each talk 2 minutes, perhaps.
I just still don't understand why we are, if we're going to keep the ranking system the way it is, why are we then taking away the kids' ability to choose? That's my biggest problem with this, is why is the principal choosing now rather than, if we're still going to have that top ranked class, are you saying that, because based on what I'm hearing you say then, is that the only reason why those kids, and I know this is hypothetical and probably a little bit of an exaggeration, but the only reason why those kids are going to take those extra 8 classes at nighttime is so that they could speak on stage? Is that it? Or is it because they actually want to be 1 and 2? So if we're not changing the system, then we just didn't evolve the weighting system the way we should have, the way the rest of our educational system did, and that's why we're not changing the right thing.
A lot of counties have removed the class ranking system. And we had that conversation around class ranking, just in general, to your point, not just removing 1 and 2, but to remove the ranking system. We didn't do that because, again, some colleges still ask for that. So I do understand what you're saying with, it seems odd to do 1 and 2 and not the rest of it. I just wanted to give you the background on that
It's not that,
conversation.
it's just the fact that we don't let the kids go and choose who's speaking. Now, we take that out of their hands. And that's the part that just doesn't make sense.
Sorry. I would just like to reiterate something that Ms. Murthy said during public comment about middle school, because it's not just like Dr. Willow said, like high schoolers, juniors and seniors taking these classes like at HCC. It can start as early as middle school, getting a geometry credit your 8th grade year at Springfield. And I'm pretty sure no 5th grader is going into 6th grade thinking about valedictorian and class rank in high school. They just want to go to Springfield to, learn some harder math. But ultimately, I didn't take geometry in middle school, so I'm taking AP Calc this year, and I have some friends who got to take it junior year, and now they're loading up on different APs this year. And it's just like how, in middle school, I think it starts unintentionally, but it's still not quite as fair because, I also wasn't able to take FOT or Algebra 1 in middle school either. So it was just kind of, just because of how full the classes were, and I ended up taking them over the summer. But a lot of kids don't have the opportunity to have their parents drive them to summer school every day like mine did. And I was able to load up on AP classes like that.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz. Any other questions? I have one more. There are 24 school systems in the state of Maryland. Are there others that we are aware of who are looking at similar changes to existing practices?
I believe half have eliminated, I want
Half?
to say 12 have eliminated class rank, val, sal, all of it. We didn't obviously go that far.
Thank you. So if there are no further questions, any further discussion, we'll go to the vote. We're voting to approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy IKD entitled Honor Rolls and Graduation Honors. All those in favor of approval? 5 affirmative. Those opposed? 2 opposed. Student member concurs with the affirmative. Motion carries. We have an approved first read. Thank you, Dr. Willow. Thank you, Mrs. Moran. Next item of new business is this evening's consent agenda, and we have Mr. Scott Bakedal, our Supervisor of Purchasing, presenting. Good evening.
Good evening, President Williams, members of the board, Dr. Sovine. Tonight I have 2 items for your review. These items were reviewed by our Purchasing Review Committee and are being recommended for approval, and staff is available if you have any additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bakewell. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve the awards for English Language Arts Core Resource to Amplify Education, Inc. at an approximate 5-year cost of $3,333,142, and shop improvements at various schools to Callis Contractors, LLC at a cost of $354,600.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Any questions, any discussion?
So I do have a bunch of questions. First, I'm going to ask a couple questions. I did get a email question from a parent. A lot of the stuff I know I have discussed, I've asked questions about already, but not publicly. So I do think these are important to ask. Really, the big concern it seems like this parent has is how appropriate it is as far as grade level goes. Some of the stuff that they talk about, and I do agree with the parent that some of the content, I should say, really isn't appropriate for, a first grader or a fifth grader, something you would expect to be discussed in high school, something like ancient history or whatever, Other people do have concerns about religion. In some cases, I know they mention religion. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we go too deep into religion. We just mentioned that there is a religion, that this is what they called it, that they believe in. Could you guys elaborate on that, please?
Absolutely. So CKLA is built under the research around how we best learn to read. And the research indicates that vocabulary and background knowledge is essential for learning comprehension and to be able to comprehend any text that we read. So very strategically and systematically, the knowledge base is built from pre-K through fifth grade. So like ancient civilization is a topic that is explored across grade levels and builds each time for each grade. And so yes, and for example, in first grade, they do learn that in our ancient civilizations, they had particular ways that they earned money, that they grew food, that they ruled one another, that they had laws, and that they also had specific beliefs that led to their actions, and that those were religions. And those lessons then explore ways that those ancient civilizations contribute to where we are now. And it builds on knowledge that we need to understand the world around us. It's also really important to understand that this is a resource that has units as well as lessons, and that after the purchase of these resources, under your approval, we will then bring teacher teams together to look at the unit level all the way down to the lesson level, and we will make decisions around what units we use, what lessons we use, how we might adjust those for the students in front of us, as well as to hold true to the knowledge that we need to build across time to ensure that our students are readers.
Very, very good, thank you. And so another thing about that was the parent particularly was concerned because as they're talking about something that he feels, and I worry that that is above a fifth grader's head, that now the kid will become disengaged from class because they don't understand it. That was a concern of his. In my response to him, to be candid, I personally believe that it is the teachers that make the content fun and not the content itself, but it is still a very legitimate concern. And then also, go on, I forget what the other part of that was, so go ahead.
I want to stress that part of this process was a field experience, and that we began the first day of school, that we had 68 teachers in pre-K through fifth grade use resources that they were trained to use with our students. And we had, of our CKLA users, 90% of them at the end when they shared whether they would recommended CKLA. And when you first look at a lesson, you might say, why do they need to know all of these vocabulary words in first grade? Why do they need to know these topics? And then when you watch the lessons and you talk with the teachers who are using the lessons with the students, they are incredibly engaged. They can use the vocabulary to speak intelligently about the topics, and they are high expectations because our students can achieve them.
And I might just add, if I could, that several of you as board members had the ability to go out and see the resource in use at Salem, at Pangbourne, and other schools. And I would say in the visits that I was with several of you that students were very engaged. And I think we had that conversation around the engagement level because, again, with elementary, it's the art of storytelling that gets them excited. We know that comprehension is important. This is getting back to science and social studies, good foundational skills that help build reading. And again, the classrooms that we were in, I agree 100% with your comment, Mr. Evans. It is the teacher. That is the secret sauce or the ingredient that matters the most. But just like any profession, it's about having the right tools to use. And I think this is a tool that, again, with training for those that have not had the opportunity to learn about it or use it, I think you will see that 90% holds up consistently.
I just wanted to add, having watched classes embrace CKLA, the classically based education that gives us the history of the world allows us to build on that background knowledge for all 12 years. To see pre-K and first graders talk about democracy, Constitution, was awesome.
So I will say that, and I agree that when I went to Pangbourne to watch, teachers did a phenomenal job. It was great to be able to go and see what the kids are doing. They were highly engaged. Kids were into it. Teachers were into it. It was a really good experience. But I also went to Ruth Ann Monroe and to Fountaindale, and I observed Benchmark, and I quite frankly saw the same things. Our teachers did an awesome job. The kids loved being there. One kid asked me where my hair went, but he told me when I told my hair wasn't, or my hair couldn't handle me, he said, well, you could have some of mine if you wanted. But anyway, when I go and look at that, I saw very similar things. And one thing that I heard about Benchmark was that what the kid was discussing in science class that day could have already been brought up in their English class, where we talk about it being available across grade levels, the information they need to access across grade levels. It seems pretty interesting that you could go and access something, hear about something in reading, and then go and learn about it in science. Am I missing something there too, or what's the process there? Thought process there.
There are connections in science and social studies to the grade level content and across grade levels as well, in both CKLA and Benchmark.
Okay.
And I would just add, Benchmark's a great product.
Yeah.
We would not have piloted it if we didn't believe in it. And those teachers that piloted Benchmark are to be commended. They did an excellent job. It was a tough decision for the committee, looking at all the feedback that came from teachers. We do, let teachers have a large say in the resources. They're out there, they're using them, and at the end of the day, had Benchmark been the higher rated one, we certainly would be up here arguing on why we need to make that purchase.
Yeah. And so I will say, before I do ask one other question, it would have been helpful, when we get our information, I understand that, this is what you're recommending to us, so that's what you tell us about. For me personally, it would have been helpful to know a little more information about Benchmark, and honestly, there's no better way to get it than to actually observe it, so, but in the future, when we do make decisions like this where it's one or the other, it would be helpful if we could kind of understand both sides at the same time. And with that being said, obviously, I tend to ask the most questions about the fiscal part of it, and that was another concern the parent had. So, can you talk about how this is going to be paid for? And here they talk about grants and general fund and all that, but this is still at the end of the day over five years, $3.33 million here. Where's this money coming from, and what are we getting rid of to fund this?
Excellent question. So we used a series of grants. The big cost is the initial cost, because as you're out seeing the different items in the classroom, the teacher sets, the maps, all of the displays that you saw, That's a one-time cost. So we're using one-time grants to pay for that one-time cost. Right now, we have $1.6 million coming from Maryland Leads, another $784,000 from the TSI grant, $121,000 from the pre-K grant. And when you take that and offset some of the other products that we think that this will ultimately replace when it's fully implemented, the cost a year is $38 per student. And what that buys you, Mr. Evans, is 10 of the work books that I'm going to call them workbooks. And the reason we chose workbooks, to be honest, we might have been able to go a little bit cheaper had we went online, but we think at the elementary level it is important that students have paper and pencil in front of them, a combination along with Chromebooks for other activities in the day. So we chose the workbook, and again, 10 workbooks for $38 comes out to $380 a workbook.
What was the cost of benchmark?
It was comparable. I want to say it was a little over, I don't know that I have that right off the top of my head, but they were within the same price range. All of the companies, give or take, tend to be at this level, tend to be within the price range. They were, the price was determined as part of the Maryland Leads grant, so it didn't matter whether Allegheny purchased it or we purchased it. It's the same price because the state ended up organizing the prices so all 24 counties could benefit from discounts.
Any other questions? Mr. Stelter?
I just want to say, I did voice some concerns in Finance Committee and Curriculum and Instruction Committee about some of the things in the program, the CKLA that we're purchasing or planning to purchase tonight or having a vote on it and so forth. I did voice some concerns about the depth of some of the topics because were they too much for elementary students? I was impressed, however. What grade was that we observed at Salem?
Second grade.
Second grade. I was amazed at how engaged those kids were talking about democracy and stuff in ancient Greece and so forth. It would be hard to keep some high school students engaged on a topic like that, believe me, and so forth. And I voiced my concerns. I read all those comments that were included in the weekly update. There were pages and pages and pages of comments about this program and benchmark and so forth. I also discovered, correct me if I'm wrong, that Florida and Texas use this program?
Texas and Tennessee.
And many other districts across the country.
Which
yes.
amazed me because of, well, we know politically where Texas stands on textbooks and programs and so forth and all that. So I'm going to keep an eye on this thing. I've been told that we can make adjustments to some of the content and so forth as we go along. And I have faith in the staff and our teachers that will be done. So there are my comments about that. I think both programs were probably very good from what I know of them and the comments I read. But, yeah, that's all I'll say.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move to the vote. We're voting to approve this evening's consent agenda. All those in favor? Okay, we have 7 affirmative. Student member concurs. We have an approved consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our final action item under new business is the approval of Board of Education Advisory Committee appointments. And we have Mr. Jeff Prue, our Chief Operating Officer, to present.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams, members of the board, Dr. Savine. This evening, I present to you a slate of candidates for a board advisory committee as discussed in closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Prue. Is there a motion?
President Williams, I move to approve the proposed candidates for membership of membership on the Board of Education Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
I read that wrong, but you get the point, yeah.
I've got the gist. I think we have the gist. Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. So we have a motion to approve the candidates for membership on one of the board's advisory committees. All those in favor? Okay, we have 7 affirmative.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that brings us back to the superintendent's report and update.
President Williams, members of the board, we have an exciting opportunity for our middle school students. WCPS is proud to partner with the Washington County Chamber of Commerce and the Civics Bee. The competition promotes civic literacy and encourages students to be active, engaged members of their community. Again, this is open to all middle school students. The first round involves writing a 500-word essay. Those are reviewed by a panel of judges who pick the top 20 entries. The finalists move on to compete in a live quiz to test their civic knowledge. From there, the top 3 finishers have a chance to compete at the state level. WCPS has sent details about the Civics Bee to middle school parents via email. Students can also ask their social studies teachers for more information. We're very excited to see our students compete in this event, and we thank the Washington County Chamber of Commerce for bringing this to our community. I'd also like to recognize that January is National School Board Month. I have a tremendous amount of respect for our board members. They are incredibly committed to our community's children, and they invest immeasurable amounts of time and energy in our shared mission to support all of our 23,000 students and to move WCPS forward. These business meetings are only a fraction of the work that they do. They serve on committees, represent our school system at community events, advocate for student needs at various levels of government, attend conferences and seminars, cheer on students at extracurricular activities, meet with stakeholders, and much, much more. Governing a school system of this size and scope is not easy. These men and women serve our community with compassion, integrity, sincere consideration of every decision they face. Thank you all for your willingness and your enthusiasm to serve on our Board of Education. Thank you.
And we all take a pretty good picture, too, especially Mr. Gaspard. It's very handsome.
It was years ago.
Dr. Savai.
Throw dark silent.
That brings us to personnel action for this evening. Dr. Webster, our Associate Superintendent for Administration and Leadership, presenting.
Good evening, President Williams, members of the board, Dr. Savine. As discussed earlier during closed session, there are several personnel staff changes for your review. At this time, I ask for your approval of today's personnel items.
Thank you, Dr. Webster. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the personnel actions dated Tuesday, January 17th, 2023, as presented in the closed session.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zedmeyer. Any questions before we move to the vote? Okay, we're voting to approve personnel actions as discussed earlier in closed session. Those actions are dated today, January 17th, 2023. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. We have 7 affirmative, so we have approved personnel actions. Thank you. And now for reports to the board. We have Mrs. Randback with a legislative briefing for the
Thank you.
2023 Maryland Legislative Assembly, or a session, not assembly.
Thank you.
Session.
Thank you. I will keep it brief since the session convened on January 11th, 2023. There are two committees that handle most education bills, the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. The Senate Education, Energy, Environment Committee was previously Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs, but with the restructuring, that changed. There's also a new committee chair, Brian Feldman, who has an extensive background in the energy and utilities policy. So it'll be interesting to see the amount of time and attention to education bills since the previous leadership had education background. So we'll have to see what happens with that. The Senate Education, Energy, Environment Committee will have a briefing on January 19th at 1 o'clock with topics to include Blueprint and the AIB, as well as curriculum development and the state of Maryland schools, tutoring, and where federal money has been spent. Generally, where priorities align with MABE's. MABE is focused on maintaining local board autonomy, funding for school programs and construction. MABE monitors and generally opposes curricular mandates, any unfunded mandates, unfavorable changes to the collective bargaining laws, legislation that might negatively impact student discipline or safety, and any expansion of charter schools or vouchers. We will have the opportunity to provide testimony on proposed legislation if we deem it necessary. Only a fraction of the proposed legislation that will be considered this session has been filed, so we don't yet know what we have to tackle over the next 90 days. But with that being said, two bills have been pre-filed that we're monitoring. One would remove class size as an illegal topic of bargaining and references making it a mandatory topic of bargaining, which we would oppose. And the other addresses school management of anaphylactic allergies. We're following that because it would have significant impact in how we handle basically those kids who carry EpiPens around or the school has them and how we'd administer them. They also anticipate that there'll be a virtual education bill. It passed at the end of the last session but was vetoed by Governor Hogan, so we anticipate it'll return the session. Finally, as we discussed with the delegation, we'll be interested in amending the Time to Care Act. The delegation was open to the idea. Our office provided information at the request of the delegation as to what we as a school system are currently doing, what school systems in general provide in terms of paid leave, and even proposed some suggestive language for them to consider. And we're happy to work with them if they decide to move forward with the amendment, provide any testimony and additional information they may need. We mentioned the work session, it'd be a heavy financial lift for the school system. MABE is also looking at language as well. There's a lot of effort from the public entities to find some sort of exemption or waiver or modification to the Time to Care Act, as within the law, most public entities, like for school systems, we're required to give teachers a day of sick leave per month work, so we do offer leave. That's really, at this point, we've only been in session about a week, so I think that's really all I have to share if there's any questions.
Any questions for Mrs. Ram? Thank you very much for the report. Okay, next on our agenda, board member committee reports. Dr. Zentmeyer, would you like to begin?
Sure. We met here on Friday the 13th, and we reviewed the middle school 8th grade day schedule, as well as Blueprint, and we meet again here on February 17th at 10 a.m.
Would you like to tell us who we are?
Curriculum and instruction?
Thank you. I don't think
Curriculum and instruction.
I don't think you mentioned the name of the
I
committee.
thought you did.
Nor did I, so. But thank you. Thank you. February 17th, right?
Right.
Thank you. Facilities, Mr. Gessert.
We are the facilities group, just so you know. And we will be meeting on February the 10th, which is a Friday at 1 o'clock.
All righty. We look forward to hearing your report.
Me too.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee will meet on, I believe it's Monday, whatever January 30th is at 9 o'clock. Monday, yeah. Monday, January 30th.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Human Resources.
Human Resources will be meeting Tuesday, January 24th at 9 a.m. in the board conference room.
Bickford?
Policy Committee will meet Thursday, February 16th at 1 o'clock, where we will discuss some of the feedback we received on some of the policy this evening.
Great. Ms. Cruz, student government?
I have nothing as of
Nothing?
right now.
All right, thank you. Did you want to say anything from Nate? Okay. Okay, that brings us to miscellaneous business, and we have one item. It's always under miscellaneous business, and that is our list of future agenda items. Quite a long list, 20 items. Work sessions, a work session coming up on the budget on February 7th. We have second readings to different policies coming up at our next meeting in February, the first meeting in February. We have some recognitions. We'll have reports on our legislative work, what's happening in the session. And we have a presentation on the blueprint plan, a very important presentation coming up at our second meeting in February. We had a suggested agenda item, so it is important to make your suggestions known to the Agenda Planning Committee. We had a suggestion to highlight Marshall Street Schools program, and we have that presentation coming up on February 21st. So those are just a few highlights from our list of 20. Again, should you have a agenda item that you would like to see appear at a future meeting, please let a member of the Agenda Planning Committee know, and we'll take care of getting that on the agenda, on an agenda. That brings us to board member comment. Ms. Cruz, would you like to begin down there?
Sure. The past week has been very busy for me musically, but it's been so amazing, and I'm so happy that we had the programs that we did. We had All County Orchestra concert on Saturday, which was amazing, and our All County Band concert will be next Saturday, I think 26th or the 28th, whichever one of those is a Saturday. That's when our All County Band concert is. 27 in the middle. So, it's gonna be a great performance. And if any of you guys are free on the 27th, then I would recommend coming. The middle school will be playing at 7, and then the high school will start around 7:45, or whenever the middle school ends.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz.
It's the 28th.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
I counted back from Daryl's meeting.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did.
28.
28.
Okay.
8th is a Saturday.
All
So
right.
sorry.
Thank you. Mrs. Murray?
Yes, I attended the robotics competition at the mall on Saturday. It was very interesting. It always is. I was able to catch some of South High's competition. I don't know what school they were competing against, but it was very interesting and exciting, and they all do a wonderful job.
Thank you. Mr. Bickford?
I just wanted to say how gratifying it was to see the room filled and to see the band programs thriving. We all remember, I certainly remember how popular band was when I was in high school at North. So it was nice to see that a nice crowd. And I appreciated the students coming and speaking, and I appreciated the debate. I think it is a pretty significant policy change, and it should be debated.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Mr.
I would
Stouffer?
ditto just what Mr. Bickford said. My personal schedule, I'm going to be visiting Mrs. McCarthy's class tomorrow morning at Fountaindale, which will necessitate getting up before 7:30 to get there. And on Thursday, I'll be visiting Mrs. Dorm's kindergarten class at Fountaindale. They were here, both here last few weeks. Mrs. McCarthy is here this evening. Mrs. Dorham was here and spoke to us, I believe, last meeting or meeting before, I can't remember. But finally got around to being able to arrange some visits.
Mr. Stauffer. Mr. Gassford.
I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Evans.
Yeah, I actually have a bunch, so I'll take up your time then. I got to see Ms. Cruz over here in the holiday spectacular. I guess, do we call it Russian holiday spectacular since we did it so late? I don't know how that works.
Orthodox.
Yeah, Orthodox. But obviously, great job. Obviously, you and the whole student body out there did an awesome job. It went off flawlessly, and really enjoyed being there. I also got a chance, so before Christmas, I got a chance to see Miss Smith in Ruth Ann Monroe. I got the chance to observe her do benchmark, and then I actually got to see Miss McCarthy do benchmark at Fountaindale, and then I also got a chance to see Miss Ward and Miss Durham over at Fountaindale as well. And I saw Miss Morris and Miss Barber over at Pangbourne do CKLA. The one thing that I can tell, obviously I saw, very similar classes teaching, different curriculum, and it was really impressive to see what the teachers do. I was a high school teacher for 10 years, and what I do, teaching one class, throughout the whole day is so much easier than what the elementary school teachers have to do, where not only are they preparing for all 4 subjects, but at that age level, you can't miss a beat. You have to be emotionally available 100% of the time. It's really impressive what you do. And it was great to see you in action. I really appreciate you making that decision. Very difficult for me to vote for CKLA. Typically, all I would have known was 90% of the teachers, said yes to this, and 60% said yes to that, and I would have said, well, that's an easy choice. And quite frankly, that is what my choice came down to, because you made it really difficult. I saw very similar things in both the classes, so I appreciate you taking the time. Please continue to show up to all the teachers and let us know how you feel, if there's something we're missing, because we don't get to be there, I don't want to say in the trenches, because it's, you do great work, and I just appreciate your willingness to engage us and help us understand what we're voting on and making choices on, so thank you.
I have to echo that. Being at Fountaindale this week was fabulous. It really was, and the teachers were right on. And thanks to the Office of Early Learning, Kelly Longerbeam and her team for honoring us for School Board Month. And now I have a question for you. Do you know what this is?
Currency.
Monopoly money.
No. It's a Ben Franklin, and today is his birthday. Now, I could go on and on about him and his accomplishments and the lightning rod and how, in fact, when I asked my grandchildren, what can you tell me about Ben Franklin? They said he invented flippers when he was a kid, which is true. Swim fins, he invented those. First subscription library, he was an ambassador to France, our first one. He was the first U.S. postal inspector for the United States. So he's a pretty cool person. But he shares this day with kids. Today is Kids Inventor Day. So our youngest creativity has brought us so much. Trampolines, popsicles. Louis Braille was blinded at 3 and by 15 had patented the system for the Braille system. The flippers, of course, by Ben Franklin. All invented by kids. All invented by kids. My point, inside each of our students is a little Ben Franklin waiting to get out. So as the people with the energy in this room, invest in them. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Thank you all for a great day of meetings. We started off our afternoon with a joint session with the commissioners, and I'm very appreciative to our Board of Commissioners for joining us to learn more about our CTE program and apprenticeship program here in Washington County, as well as more information about the blueprint. So I look forward to future opportunities to sit down with our commissioners and learn together and collaborate with them. Colleagues, I thank you for a great closed session and a good business meeting. And with that, I'll say good night and meeting adjourned.